Hello, if you clicked on this YouTube video, it means you want to build a heavy arrow that is not afraid of bones. When I refer to this, I am talking mostly about deer hunting. This is going to be mostly related to deer hunting, hog hunting, and small critters like that. If you want to talk about dangerous game or African game, go check somebody out on that channel. But this is how I build an effective hunting arrow, and that is by making the weight 550 grains or higher. Anything less than that, it just doesn't perform well. So, a couple ways you can do that, and I will go over later about how I build that for today's presentation. But most arrows are weighing in at 450 grains with 100 grain to 125 grain tip, giving it a 10% FOC. And I used to hunt with arrows like this, had success with it, until I went to traditional archery. Had to build much more effective arrows due to lack of speed and power. And what that taught me was exactly how to build arrows made to kill stuff. Not made to hit a target, but made to kill stuff. And if you watch YouTube, there's guys building so-called heavy arrows. When I say 500, 550, that is like the bottom end. My arrow setups are at least 600, 650. Man, even if I'm going to go for something really thick, skinned animal, such as an aoudad, I might even bump up to 700, 750. Maybe not an aoudad. It's hard to get close with them. So anyway, you can add weight to the front of your arrow. This is a normal insert. It weighs anywhere from 15 to 25 grains. I've built so many arrows. That's kind of where the industry is leading. It's 15, 20 grains. Now you will see certain companies build heavy arrows. They love to argue about how heavy their arrows are, how they have this high FOC, and they put an insert like this, 50 grain insert. And they talk about how much more powerful it is, and it does give you a higher FOC. I think Blood Runners, Bloodsport arrows, they have the 50 grainers in it, and that's fine and dandy. We're starting to get somewhere with that. This is the minimum for me. 100 grain insert. That really adds a lot of weight to the front of your arrow, and we can hit that 650 mark quick. Anyone who's done the research on it, 650 is where things just start penetrating. They quit caring what's in front of them. 650 grains, that's the magic number. If you get really crazy, in some of my very short range arrows, you put an insert like this in it. That's a 300 grain insert. You put a 100 grain broadhead in this that you buy at Walmart, it messes things up. There's an example right there. Significant difference. So, inserts are probably my favorite way to go if I want to completely front load. If I want to completely front load my arrow. I don't like doing that all the way. I like front loading it. I like putting that 100 grain insert in. Front loading, I'm going to get to that in a minute. This is not, if you want some super awesome edited video, came the wrong place. The other way is do field points. Well, just points in general. Here is your normal suit. This is one I pulled out of the ground on an arrow I found today. 125 grain tip. That's your standard. Everybody shoots those. You go to your sporting goods store, they have tons of them. Not hard to find. And of course they have those in various sizes too. So if you had a bunch of arrows with the tips already glued in, you might want to go this route. I think the Ranch Fairy also always says buy the test kit and test things out. Now, I would say that's a pretty good place to start, but things get a little wonky. Example I have right here, that's a 300 grain tip. Alright, there's your big difference. Okay, 300, 125. Great to simulate what you want to do for turkeys. Much more powerful. Now, when I got into this, I did a lot of front loading. And what I figured out was a 650 grain arrow with most of the weight in the front of the arrows just did not want to fly right. And also, what I found was the spine of the arrow was insane. If you're shooting a 60-pound bow, you're probably going to jump up to a 400 spine arrow, or you're shooting a 400 spine arrow, you jump up to a 350 spine, 340 spine, and when you front load it with something like this, it still does not want to fly right. It goes all wonky, and that you don't want that. Okay, I'm a heavy arrow advocate, but if the arrow is flying like just terribly, you don't get rid of it. What I found was nothing wanted to fly right. Also, you just took a lot of distance off. 30 yards in, just front load it like that, and you're going to kill anything you want. I mean, just aim at the front shoulder of a deer, it'll probably just knock the ever-living crap out of it. I wouldn't even worry about it. But you get out to past 40, things, they just drop off. Every time I'd go out to shoot, drops off right in the dirt. Right, gets almost started, drops off. So I'm sitting here going, okay, how do I make this thing heavy but still have the penetration? Still have that high FOC, have that 650 grain arrow that just knocks the tar out. I mean, buries my arrows and targets. Small little caveat, I found the inserts are easier to spine out. They flew better. Even this big old bad boy right there, it flew better than screwing this big old bad boy on the end. I'm assuming because the weight is still closer to the center. You know, it's not as front loaded, but it's still front loaded enough. So there's one huge downside. The biggest downside I found to just having a normal arrow and screwing in a tip like this is when you jump over to broadheads, just you're gonna slap down a lot of money. You're gonna slap down $50 to $100 for arrows and broadheads. I mean, just actually it'd be $100 just for the broadhead. You're not, you know, you're not going to get out of that cheap. So if I build arrows specifically just front loaded with that super high FOC, I prefer to do this right here. Bam. That is 400 grains right there. Glue this into the end of your arrow, and you have your normal 100 grain broadhead, super high FOC. You can buy your normal price broadheads, super high FOC. Again, you're going to have to take these out and practice with them. Again, You don't have to go as crazy like this big bad boy, but you're going to want to try it out. I mean, even if you wanted, and I'll show you later how I do it, this is closer to what I set up as. Right here, there's 200 grains right there. 200, 225. That's a pretty good high FOC, and it's not going to mess with your spine a lot. The last tool I use to make heavy arrows is weight tubes. Now, they come in different sizes. I get these from Three Rivers Archery. This is the 8 grains per inch. Okay? And here's how they're installed. Here's your normal arrow. Here's the back end. This one is pre-cut, so I had to take it apart before I did this video. Put it in your arrow. Take the end of your tip. And just push her on in. Bam. I still got to fletch this one out. This is a Allen Kryptos, so I spent $4 on this arrow. All in about 20 bucks for a dozen of the weight tubes. This arrow went from 8 grains per inch, meaning there's 8 grains for every inch this arrow is. It's 29 inches. Do the math on your own time. And I just went to 16 grains per inch minus the little end up here. Arrows just fell. This is 100% raw. And your little tip in the back. Pretty close. Now, with an arrow like this, I found these fly almost as far as if there was no weight in it. When the weight was evenly distributed, the arrow flew just like this, and it would fall like this. Comes to 50 yards, it flew perfect. It was flying great, but we lost a little bit of FOC. So now I build them like this. Again, lost the fletchings on this one because I shoot my bows. I don't just sit around and talk about it. You look right there, show up on camera, it's gold. It's not really, it's brass. But this has a brass insert, weight tube, 8 grains per inch. That is a Walmart tip right there. And that is how I build my arrows. I mean 600, 700 grains, and this bad boy will go to 50 yards. 50 yards shooting my bow. Now if you're wanting to shoot out past 50 yards, I would stick more of that 500 by 50 range. If you're going to go past, you're going to go that 70 yards, whatever, you're going to see a lot of drop, and you're going to want something different. But I'm in Missouri. We don't shoot past 50 yards with a bow. Normally, someone in the comments going to be from Missouri. Oh, well, I shoot 100 yards. Well, good for you. My setups do not shoot that far. You know, the channel's name is Heavy Arrow for a reason, and I'm trying to pass this along on how to build what I call a heavy arrow. And it's basically 3 components. Your insert, weight tube, put them together. That's the cheapest way to get into a 650 grain arrow, and you're going to save money. You don't need to buy the 100 grain broadheads. They work great. The premium broadheads probably work great, but in my experience, I just don't want to mess with those. You're shooting them at deer, they get messed up, you hit a deer, you break an arrow. I'm trying to show you how to build a quality, cheap arrow that you can still go 40, 50 yards with. And maybe you can go a little farther than that. Again, maybe you're pulling more than me. I only pull 60 pounds. I don't need more than that. But when I went to traditional archery, these are the skills that the new stuff's not showing, that the industry's not showing. I'm seeing all these broadheads talk about it will pivot out of the way of shoulder blades, and you build an arrow like this, you get a fixed broadhead, you're going to knock the ever-living tar out of things. You're not going to have to worry about shoulder blades. I'm not guaranteeing your animal. You got to put the arrow where it needs to go. But it's not going to worry about a bone, or if it goes through and hits the other shoulder blade, it's going to break it. It's going to break it. It's going to leave. You're going to get pass-throughs. You're not going to have to worry about penetration. These arrows are built to kill. They're not target arrows. The downside of these heavy arrows is you're not going to have this tiny little group at 50 yards. You're going to have a good group at 50 yards, but you're not going to have this tiny group because it's not going to fly as flat. You're going to have bigger gaps. You need to know your yardage. But when you start talking close range, actual bow hunting range, these things work 100 times better. Well, this is Heavy Arrow, and I hope you enjoyed today's presentation on how to build a heavy arrow. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you like this video, press like. If you want to hear more about how to build arrows for hunting, subscribe. I got more videos